And so when someone says, I struggle, I find it a turn off when someone is nice, they are articulating a deep, deep pattern that has been there for a long time in their life that they didn't choose and that they may not even be aware of.
And most likely it sounds like their father probably was either rude to their mother or rude to them as a child, or maybe had some, behavioral patterns that caused them to feel rude at different times.
Yeah, or they, were neglected and they felt like in order to get attention, they had to do a lot, or they had to be, the golden child, or they had to, meet everyone's needs. They had to go out of their way all the time to make someone happy. And so, and then they'd get like, whether it's from the father or the mother, they'd get like a hit of love. And all of a sudden it's like, like, I feel calm, I feel safe. Oh, this feels so good. And then of course it's right back to, the next day they're cold again, and you have to fight for that next hit. And so if you've experienced that and now you're out there looking for love, you may very well have developed the association that love is something you have to earn. Love is something that comes in fits and starts. Love is something that you're grateful when you get a hit of it, and then you have to endure these periods of someone being cold in order to get the next hit. And of course that's, what's known as the trauma bond. But that's really what someone is saying. When someone says I get turned off by people who are nice, and I get turned on by people who, give me, and we have all sorts of euphemistic terms for it, like the bad boy, or the person who is super bold, or the person who has an edge or whatever. But a lot of the time what we're talking about is I'm trauma bonded to people who are hot and cold, inconsistent, make me have to earn their love, their attention, take it away from me and then give me it back again. And that, by the way, makes that woman who said that a perfect target for abusive people. It makes them a perfect target for people who forget, like, whether they're abusive because they're narcissists or because they're, sociopathic. It makes you a perfect target for someone who's in even just a selfish phase of their life. Because someone who's in a selfish phase of their life takes what they can get.
It's intermittent, it's up and down, it's hot and cold.
They're glad to be around someone who doesn't ask a lot of them.
Yeah.
So even if you don't get someone who's truly toxic and abusive, you're still going to attract people who are selfish.
Yes.
And those people are going to waste your time and your energy because they're not where you're at. But you never test the relationship because this is on some level what you're looking for. This is what's familiar to you.
Man, this is so, I can relate to this because in previous seasons of life, I really struggled of having the hard conversations. Like I dreaded it.
Oh.
So, looking back, I can say, man, that's crazy. Just have the conversation and whatever, just deal with it. But in the moment, when I didn't have the tools or the nervous system to feel safe myself, and I needed the approval of someone else to feel safe, or I needed someone else to be okay with the hard conversation that I was having. And when they weren't okay with it, or they would explode, or they would cry, or they would scream, or they would, not speak to me for 2 days or something because they were upset of what I wanted to talk about, or they avoided it, it would make me feel like, oh, I'm really insecure. And I always had the fear of like, I guess it was being alone, or it was like the person not loving me in return, or me not being good enough or something like that. There was probably a combination of insecurities or fears that caused me to be afraid of having difficult conversations and just saying what I really wanted to say. And then I remember having like, throat clenching and like heart palpitations over like years of being in these different relationships where I never felt like I was able to speak up. And I can't blame the other person. We can never blame the other person for our decision to not communicate, not set standards, not say the things we need to say. We can't blame the other person. But it always felt like, oh, this person isn't willing to accept me for who I am if I say the full truth, or if I talk about the things that I'm uncomfortable with, if I'm If I don't like this situation, they will not accept me. And they didn't. They didn't accept me for my authentic conversations or my truth. But I was afraid of losing them for them not accepting me for who I was. And therefore, it was never going to work out. And it wasn't until I started to really understand that and become aware of it and start to heal that process, a lot of things changed with Martha, because I was like, wow, this is an incredible human being in front of me that I'm starting to date and connect with and meet. Wow, she's pretty special. But I got to the point where I was like, but I can't be willing to lose myself in order to try to have someone want to stay with me. I cannot go down this path again, which I'd done 5 or 6 times in 20 years in different relationships, where I lost myself to try to please someone else so that they'd want to like and love me. And therefore hating myself in return, resenting myself, resenting the person, resenting the relationship, feeling guilty of why I wasted all this time and energy being in this relationship, fighting for it, while all the while I was losing myself and losing my self-respect in that process. And it wasn't until Martha, I was like, oh man, I'm going to have the uncomfortable conversations pretty early on, right? In the first few months, I'm going to talk about, these are my standards. These are my values. This is what I want. And this is what I'm not willing to deal with in a relationship. And be willing to say, maybe this isn't the right fit. If you don't have the same or similar standards, and if you aren't willing to fully accept all of me, my past, my shames, my insecurities, etc., then maybe we're not the right fit. But that means I might not be with a great person in front of me. And that's a scary thing.
Well,
but it was scary, but it also set me free when I made the decision, like, okay, I'd rather be free and be fully myself, authentic to myself, than trying to please and change who I am to be with someone, to have them like and love me. And that set me free to say all the conversations I wanted to. And it was like the more honest and hard conversations I had, it was like the more she fell in love with me.
Well, this is the interesting thing. This is the tragedy of giving into those patterns, because I think this is a really important thing for everyone to hear, is that the past does not have to equal the future when it comes to these patterns, right? Our nervous system may have gotten wired in this way at a time when we didn't choose for it to be wired that way. It just happened to us because that's what we needed to do to survive. But it doesn't mean that it's not a life sentence. Once you become more aware of those patterns, you do have the power to have an enormous impact on changing them, or even just how you relate to those patterns. You know, I relate to what you're saying, because I know that one of the things that I have come to enjoy in my life is just moments of being able to sit and read a book.
Yeah.
Just to sit and read, and to do it in, you know, it doesn't matter if my wife Audrey is there, but just to feel like it's the same as if I was only on my own. In other words, I just feel like I'm in my own company and able to fully relax doing that without feeling the need to entertain somebody else. And that, even what I just said, is my stuff.
That used to scare you in the past?
It's a feeling of being responsible for somebody else's emotions.
And their happiness or their joy, yeah.
And so it would make me, I had to come to terms with the fact that I was afraid to speak up about what I needed, about really silly little things, you know, I was afraid to say, I really could use just a night to myself, or I could really use just a few hours to just read, like just something simple. Like I love, on a Sunday, I love just reading or spending a few hours just catching up on like the news, and because it's not something I do on the weekdays. I like once a week, I like to sit down and just look at like everything that's going on and just feel like I'm doing it at a leisurely pace and
not responsible for someone else's like
are they
activities.
Having a good Sunday?
Now,
and
what did it used to be like in the past?
I just wouldn't say anything. And then I would become less of myself in the relationship. And, you know, there would be resentment from my side, but I'd also be a worse version of myself because they would feel me kind of
frustrated
on some level.
Was there something like, did you try to communicate this in previous relationships? And
No,
then
it was
the
all my
person-
fault.
Oh, really?
It was all my
So
fault.
you never tried to even say it, and someone
No,
was mad at you
No, I
for
think,
wanting like 2 hours by yourself.
no, because even if that was true, it predated anyone I dated.
Okay.
It's like this deep feeling
Wow.
from childhood of feeling like I'm responsible for
Probably because you're the oldest, right?
probably. And, you know, I think in my family dynamic, I felt responsible a lot for people's emotions. And so it carried over into my relationships. And with Audrey, I would notice that something that she'd be more than happy to give me, I was afraid to say. And even when I did say it, I would then feel anxious having said it.
Really?
Yeah, because I would feel like I've upset you. I've now
she's like, "No, go
I
do
feel
your-"
like, you know, are you mad at me? Is everything okay? Are you happy? Is this? And it almost like in my head, there was this subconscious feeling that there was going to be this weird comeuppance for it. Like, you know,
You took your 2 hours of alone time. Now I'm gonna get
something,
you.
or
Yeah.
or like I'm going to go and do something really fun that you would have wanted to do.
I'm not gonna invite you.
Yeah, like it just my brain was doing all of these weird
Interesting.
things, and I had to pay attention to that and go, look, what you said is absolutely true. That if you keep doing that, it's a very similar pattern to yours. It might have different origins, but there's a similarity in being unwilling to speak up about your needs and what you want. And what you said is true, that if you didn't learn to speak up about those things, then you could be really unhappy in a relationship. And we tend to focus on that side of it, that I never want to be that unhappy again, like I was in the past when I was in a relationship and none of my needs were met. But we also often don't give enough focus to the inverse of that, which is that imagine how great your relationship could become when you're with someone who truly knows you. Like when someone gets to see all of those little idiosyncrasies about you and who you are. Like Audrey, my wife, makes fun of me all the time.
Really?
Yeah, she's constantly making fun of me because she's like, you're so particular, and you need, like, when you wake up in the morning, she makes fun of me because she's like, when you wake up in the morning, you really like those like couple of hours before I wake up, where you get to just like do all your little rituals and the things you want to do. And like, she makes fun of me for it, but she loves me for it because it's like, that's you. I know you. I know who you are. And the more she knows who I am, the more she can actually be a teammate in supporting that. And so now she's such an incredible partner that she'll say to me, hey, do you want, like, she might say to me proactively, do you want some time this weekend to yourself? Or
That's
do you
nice.
want? And so because I'm honest about the things that I would like, which requires bravery and courage, because again, it's like old wounds and old things. Like, I feel like something's going to go wrong if I do this. I've given her the gift of showing who I really am. I've given myself the gift of truly feeling seen and accepted.
Yes.